Well, hello, welcome to the channel. My name's Johnny, and you're watching Hillbilly Modeling. So this is going to be part 4 of our Diesel Tug by Lindberg here. And we got some stuff to take care of course. Always have something to take care of. The very first thing we're going to do, though, is we're going to work on our tow winch, which they call it a tow machine. That's that little fella right there. Yeah, we've got some problems with that. Of course, this wouldn't be Hillbilly Modeling if we didn't have problems. So let's go ahead and tackle the winch first, and then we're going to get into some other stuff, some railings and ladders and things like that. That ought to be fun. So let's go ahead and jump down the bench. So when it comes to kit parts, there's only four parts here for our winch. We got our base, and then this is the bracket or brace with the bits. That's what they're called. The things that can wrap hawsers and ropes and stuff around. And then we have one of our drums. Now, if you could look right there, I've already trimmed one side of the drum down. And the other is still the same as it was cast, or molded, I should say. As you can see, it runs into that bracket for our bits. So, yeah, we need to fix that. We need to turn that other one down and get it to match the one that I've already reduced its circumference. So what we're doing here is we're just going to use the actual mount itself right where the bits set into it. And we can hold a pencil there, and then we can just spin that drum around, and that will actually give us a mark all the way around. That's fairly circular. so we'll know how far down to go ahead and trim that up. So once we've got it marked, we can go ahead and use our sprue cutters here and start trimming off bits and pieces of it, trying not to get too far down in. Now, I do make a mistake and kind of angle my sprue cutters in a little bit on the bottom side, but we'll fix that later. So the next thing we need to do is turn this into a round piece rather than having all these little facets all the way around it here, where our sprue cutters have cut off the majority of the part there. And we'll just sand it around. So once we get it sanded down, now it's not quite finished yet, but we do need to check our clearance here. And we'll go ahead and set the bits back into place here on our winch mount. And then we can check and see that everything is got plenty of clearance. And that looks pretty good. All right. Now with that done, we can take a look at our drums themselves. Now, as you can see here from the kit, this is how it goes together. The drums just sit there on top of it, and that's it. Well, that looks a little bit peculiar to me. It should be something that holds it down. There should be some bracketing for some bearing housings or something that goes over top of those shafts there. So I think the best thing to do would be to make one. Actually, we're going to have to make two, one for either side. So let's go ahead and do that. So we need to find us some stock that'll match up the thickness of the side of our winch housing here. And so I'm just going to measure it here with my calipers, and that's 0.059 of an inch. And the thickest stuff I have is 0.055. So that's only 0.004 of an inch thinner, so it should be fine. We can make this work. So I have a piece here. I am going to go ahead and split it. Well, not split it, but I'm gonna mark the center of it. And we kind of need to know that because of how I'm going to go about making these parts that are going to cap off and hold our winch drums into place here. So we'll just go ahead and set and use our ruler here and mark the center of our piece of stock here. Hopefully, I believe it's going to be large enough to do exactly what we need it to do. So using my pencil, we're going to mark a center line right through the part. Just like so. and make sure it's dark enough for us to see. So using that center line, we can line up the top edge here of our winch housing, and we can just mark out those little semicircular areas there where our winch drums set down onto the housing. And then I'm just going to eyeball this and mark the center of these very carefully here. So now we've got our distance between the two drums. That should be close enough for us. And then I can take my X-Acto knife here and go ahead and put us a little divot into each one of these centers, just like so. And this is going to allow us to drill this out without our drill bit skipping across the smooth, slick surface here of that polystyrene. That way it stays as accurate as possible. So since we have two different size holes that we need to drill, it's pretty easy to do. Just match up a drill bit there that actually fits into the kit part without letting any light or any visible space underneath it show up. And that's just kind of how I selected it there. So I'm going to use a 1mm bit here, and we're going to drill out those little kind of a pilot hole for us here. Well, it's not kind of, it is. So that's right where we used our X-Acto knife to mark the centers of where we want to drill. And next up, all we got to do is drill these out. I'm just going to use my hand here to do that. Now, once I've got it drilled, as you can see here, we're going to go back to that center line that we marked and that where we have drilled our holes through our piece of stock here. And if it would quit sliding, we kind of take and cut it in half. So now we have actually two pieces that have, you know, those half moon shapes for us. So a little bit of filing will be necessary, of course, to get it to set down where it needs to, but that's okay. And of course, I didn't show you that I was whittling this out, but this is kind of the look that we have. Fairly easy to cut out and sand down. It goes pretty quick. And now we have caps that goes over top of our bearing surfaces here for our drums. And as you can see, I kind of tape those drums down to help with the fitting process so that they don't keep falling out. So I can show you guys what I'm doing. And yeah. Now we will take that tape off when we go to glue this into place, because we don't want to glue the drums into place. We want those to remain free. And this little top bracket here will allow us to do that. So I just have to make a second one. So also on the end of our main drum here, it's just a flat end on it there. I forget what you call these kind of cups that are on the end there for hauling in lines. But anyway, the very end of it here has kind of a recessed shape to it, kind of a bell shape in the end of it. So I am going to find the center on it. As you can see, I used a black marker, which really helps me to visualize and see the edges of that round end of it there. Put a little pilot hole in it, and then with a suitable size drill bit, we're going to enlarge it because it should have kind of a concave end to it. So that's what we're going to do here. We'll just put that in, and that'll give a little bit more detail to an otherwise not so interesting kit part there. So when it comes to gluing down our bearing caps that we've made, I'm going to use this thick cement here from Tamiya, mainly because it doesn't run everywhere, and then, you know, like the Tamiya Extra Thin will, because I do not want to, I don't want to glue the drums down in place. I want those to remain free so that we can later on, say, you know, wrap some rope or hawsers or cable or something around them. So we keep that option open. So we just need to cement those brackets down on both the left and right that we made. And of course, alignment is everything. So I'm just going to do my best to make sure that it's aligned to the outside or the outboard side of the actual winch housing here. And then as we put these on, we want to be careful to make sure that we are still able to rotate our drums. So we don't want to put too much cement on it because if we do, we're going to take that option away from us from having these free moving drums. So next up, we need to cement in the bit. So that's a bracket with the bits on it. And just press that down into place there. So that's our winch all made up with the extra couple of pieces that we actually made for it. And I think it's going to look really good when we've got it painted up. So I think we need to make some ladders. Now, looking at our picture here, you can see that we have coming up from our main deck up to one of the upper decks. There are side ladders, and there's also a ladder on the rear next to the winch. I think we probably should try to replicate that. And there's also obviously a ladder that goes up to the deck above the bridge where our searchlight is. And there are no railings up there in the kit part, so we're going to have to kind of work through that. And I think the first thing we need to do is see if we can actually make ladders. So this is the kit part, and as you can see, it's kind of thick, and it's got some ejector pin marks on it, and yeah, and if we're going to make other ladders, probably all of them should be kind of uniform. So we're going to go ahead and make our own ladders, or try. At least if they don't look so great, they'll all not look so great together. So, first problem we got to solve is that I do not have any thin strips that are like 1 millimeter by 0.5 millimeter dimensionally. So we're going to have to cut some. And this is the thickest, well, it's not the thickest. This is 0.025 of an inch thick stock polystyrene. And I'm just marking it off with my pencil here to the outside of the ruler at 1 millimeter. And using a steel rule, as you can see right here, I'll just line that up on the marks. And next, I am going to use a scriber, and making sure that I don't move my my steel rule. And the reason why I'm using a scriber here, if you take 2 or 3 passes, light passes, onto that polystyrene, that's going to guide. It's number one, it will guide our X-Acto knife and allow us to cut straight strips. And then number 2, it also prevents those thin strips that we're slicing off here from doing a lot of distortion and curling. Because what happens is the polystyrene, as your blade goes through the cut, kind of pushes it out. And as it does that, it'll deform the polystyrene. So if you take 3 or 4 passes with a scriber, you have relieved enough material there that you can actually cut these thin strips out. So as I cut these, I do drag my entire arm in the direction there, so we got a nice straight cut. And as you see, there we go. So this one's nice and straight, as you can see. And this is the one where I didn't use the scribing tool, and it kind of bowed and bent on me quite a bit. So I would rather not have to deal with that. So just using your scriber will really help get these thin pieces cut without too much distortion. So something that can really help you along the way is you can write down on your stock sheet material there the actual thicknesses. Now, next up, I actually need kind of like a chopping board because we need to cut steps, and I don't have one of those, so we're going to make one. And this one, it needs to be at a 90 degree. It's kind of a stop slash chopping board here. It's going to hold our polystyrene strips into place there so we can make the steps for our ladders. And I am just using the lines that's on my cutting mat here to help me line up my little pieces of wood here. Now, good painter's masking tape here is about all you need to kind of secure that. And I am going to lay down a little bit of Tamiya masking tape here so that I can mark off exactly how long of a piece I need to cut. Because we're going to have to cut quite a few. There's a lot of steps on these ladders, and all of them are going to have the same width. So we're going to go ahead and measure this up. And it looks like it's about a 5 millimeters. So I'm just going to go ahead and mark that right onto that yellow masking tape that we laid down. And then using the square end of the ruler there, we're just going to set it up, make sure that it's square, and then draw us a line all the way across the masking tape. Now this is a guide for our X-Acto blade. So as we chop off little pieces of our polystyrene here, our strips, for our steps, we're going to get the greatest amount of accuracy that I can. I don't have one of those chopping boards, which I probably should invest in, but until I do, this is kind of how we're going to do it. And yeah, so this didn't cost us anything to do, but yeah, if you really have to make a whole lot of little bitty pieces, it would be a good idea to invest in one of those boards. So next up, we need to take our left and right side rails for our ladders, and we need to mark them, and we need to mark them at the same time. And so I'm taping 2 of our 1 millimeter wide strips down, making sure that they're even. And we're just going to, again, use our cutting mat there to keep everything straight. And we're going to start us off with a 90-degree cut right across, or not a cut, but a mark where we're going to cut it. And using the original kit part as a guide, the spacing is about 3 millimeters. So every 3 millimeters, I'm going to put a line. Well, actually, right now, we're just putting a mark where we're going to put the line for each of our steps. Now, once we've got that, we'll be able to use our steel rule and kind of use our cutting mat as a guide to make sure that we're not offset. And we can just draw us a line straight across both pieces at the same time. This will kind of ensure that both the left and right sides, these index lines, well, they line up. That's always a good thing when your index lines line up. So that's the whole point of this little exercise right here. It's trying to keep everything as nice and even as possible. It gives us the greatest opportunity for success. So as you can see here, that's the bottom start line, and then we'll have a step all the way up, and then I have it marked where I want to end the top of those ladder rungs. And of course, you know, for the ladder that's going to be going up at the bridge, it's slightly shorter. So using our index line there for our cut mark, we're going to go ahead and cut. And just press down. Hopefully we're nice and straight. That way both of these legs or sides for our ladders are the same length. And we're going to keep these paired. That's kind of important that we keep them all together. And don't mix them up from one to the other, because remember now, we drew these lines directly across each of these legs. So it's a matching set, and we need to keep them matching. So let's take a look at where our ladders are going to go. I'm just checking my measurements here for our side ladders, and also for the ladder that's going to go up to the deck above our bridge, because In the pictures, there's the ladders that goes off the back, but we can't do that because on this particular model, the way the deck space is up there is different. So I'm just measuring it up for a ladder that we're just going to stick on the side here. And also, we want to check and make sure that it's going to look good for a ladder that goes straight off the back, just like in the photographs. Now we're going to start off by gluing on or cementing on the bottom rung of our ladder. And we're just using one side of the ladder right now. So we do have our mark where we need to put our rung. And I'm going to put all of these underneath the marks that I have indexed on the side rails there of our ladder. And that's the first one. We just want to make sure that it is fairly straight here. Yeah, line it up with our mark. And then I'm going to put the next to the last rung on next. I don't want to do the last rung because we need to double check the height of our ladder before we decide exactly how tall it's supposed to be. I think my measurements were like 32 millimeter. So here we have the two rungs on the ladder. So we're kind of making a box here. And right here, we're going to make sure that they're square. Because if it's not square, then our ladder will be kind of racked, and well, we don't want that. That wouldn't look too good. So I do give it a few minutes to set up some so that we're not moving them out of position here. I'm going to put a little weight on it because these parts are really, really light, and we don't want to be scooting them around and chasing them across our mat here on our cutting mat. So next up, we're going to cement the opposite side of the ladder. And again, we're just going to line up their little index mark there to make sure that hopefully everything comes out evenly spaced. And with that done, we can go ahead and cement up the top rung of our ladder there. So now that we got most of the framework here kind of laid out and it's nice and fairly solid for us, we can start filling in the gaps here with the rest of the ladder rungs that we need to install. And again, I'm just making sure that our index line are always at the top of the rung. That way, hopefully, our spacing will be the same all the way up the ladder. It wouldn't be good if our steps were not evenly spaced. That would be hard to climb. So we'll just do these one at a time. And you can cement one side first. Give it a few seconds to set up there. And then you can go ahead and align it with the opposite side. As you can see, I'm a little crooked here on this one. But you kind of get the idea. And I'm kind of working from both ends. That way I don't kind of knock something out of alignment there. I'm trying to speed it up as best I can. And so this polystyrene is nice and soft whenever you put that, to me, extra thin on it. So if something's a little bit wider than it's supposed to be, you can actually smash it down a little bit there and get our sides more straight. So on the left is the ladder that we made. On the right is the kit part, which is, it's kind of weird looking, but a little bit over thick in my opinion. But our new ladder looks a little bit more into scale. And hopefully everything's straight enough. We can make small adjustments to it before we leave it to completely dry. So when it comes to the ladder for the very top deck there, where we're going to add some railings, I just want to check it and see how it sits. And we've got plenty of room there. I think that's going to look okay. That should look pretty good for us in the end when we get everything done. So next up, I'm just going to kind of dress these up a little bit because some of our ladder rungs are not necessarily the same width as some of the others. So we can just kind of lightly sand it to bring them down into the correct dimension here. And just being very careful that we don't break anything loose. and lightly sand it down. And then you can go progressively. Here I'm using 180 grit to kind of facilitate the sanding. And then we'll come back in with a 400 and 600, kind of smooth everything out. And that'll ensure that everything gets a nice smooth coat of paint when we come to paint them all. So when it comes to our ladders, it goes to the upper deck above our superstructure here. We kind of filled those holes in the deck for the original kit parts, which means our spacing for our ladder is not going to be accurate unless we kind of space it out. And so we're going to put some blocks here underneath the ladder where it goes up against the wall of the superstructure, kind of space those out. And we need to pay attention there. As you can see, we have a little ledge there. It sticks out. That gives our ladder some relief. So we're going to replicate that. Here I've just cemented on a couple of pieces of polystyrene there. And now that I'm there with it, I think this is a good opportunity for us to add a little bit more extra detail. Rather than to trim these off nice and flat with the side of the ladder, I'm just going to space them out about 1 millimeter. And we can use a piece of that polystyrene strip that we had made earlier. And that's going to give us some spacing. We're going to trim these down to size. So the side benefit from doing it this way is that this actually gives us a bracket. So we have a lower bracket now for our ladder that keeps the spacing of the ladder correct for us. And there we go. Little brackets. And here for the ladder that goes up next to the bridge, as you can see, that little extra detail right there I think is going to look really good. So, happy coincidences. So let's go back and look at our picture here. And we are going to focus our attention on the rearmost ladder coming from the main deck up to the upper deck right next to our tow winch. As you can see, it does have more of an angle on it, which means that all of our rungs, our steps that goes on the ladder, need to have they need to be level. So we're going to have to put an angle on these. So we need to first of all figure out what that angle is supposed to be. So we're going to put the ladder right here on from the upper deck to the main deck. And I have cut a little angle there on the bottom of our polystyrene strip. And I'm just checking the angle to see if that's kind of what I'm looking to get. And as you can see, it should go flush against the main deck at the bottom angle there. And then it's just going to lean up against the upper deck, just like so. So I'm kind of happy with that. So I just need to cut the opposite side rail for it there. Now we want to double check to make sure that it's not going to interfere with our towing winch. And so it looks to be okay. We should have plenty of room there. And that'll be a nice little detail that was not included in the kit. So now we need to go ahead and put all of our index lines here. So I've made me a little spacer here that is 3 millimeters tall, or in this case wide, which is going to be the height of each one of our ladder rungs here, or steps that we're going to put in. Now I need to match that with that angle that we put on the bottom of the rail. And we're just going to move right on up and hopefully line everything up exactly the same. Now these marks are really more for getting us really close, because we're going to have to eyeball everything later. Make sure that it's all nice and set in place. We're going to go ahead and assemble this ladder the same way we did the others. The only difference is that these rungs or steps on our ladder are going to have an angle to them rather than them just being straight across. So we're going to build this up exactly the same way as we did our previous 3 ladders, and get us one at the bottom rung there, and then one next to the top rung, not the absolute top rung, because we still need to make sure that the ladder height is good. And of course, just like we did last time, we need to make sure that these are nice and square. and not sticking up and kind of flying out, because we don't want our ladder to have a twist. I'm not saying I'm the best ladder maker ever, which is obviously not true. But let's go ahead and square this up. And we're going to, once we get them square, we're going to let them set and get a little bit more solid for us so that we're not moving things around once we're done here, because we need to attach the opposite side rail of our ladder there. So when it comes to attaching the opposite side rail, we're going to do it exactly like we did the previous ladders. Just line up our lower mark there and get that cemented into place, and then we can go ahead and cement the top rung, which is going to keep our spacing correct for us, or as close as a hillbilly can get it, I guess. And then we just need to fill in with all the other steps, making sure that the angle looks right. And here we are with our ladder already made up, and it's right beside our tow winch, so I think that's going to look really good. Of course, we'll probably later on add in some handrails for this ladder. I'm not sure about the others. I'll kind of figure that out as we go. All right, so what did we get done? It doesn't seem like a lot, does it? But we did get our towing winch done. So that looks good. It looks much better than what it would have looked like had we not done the modifications that we've done. And the drums on it there still turn, so that's good. So got that, and then we did all of these ladders. So we got our two side ladders for the going up to the first deck, or the, what do you call that deck? You got your main deck and your, well, doesn't matter. I'll figure it out later. One of you guys is going to tell me. So we got those ladders done, and with our little spacers, which turned into brackets. That worked out really good. And then we've got our slightly sloped ladder for coming down off the back of the superstructure down next to the tow winch. So got that done. So yeah, that's pretty successful, I guess. All right, so I guess that's it for this video. Special thanks to all my subscribers. Because of you guys that I keep making these videos, and I hope that you enjoyed this one. And if you're not a subscriber, I hope today I earned it. So I guess I'll see you guys next Friday. You guys take care.